What's going on, everyone? My name is Jake. This is where I talk capes, and today we're here to talk about the Penguin. Jesus Christ, we're here to talk about the Penguin. What a show! Just last night, I watched the final episode of the Penguin miniseries, limited series, whatever you call it. 8 episodes, all set in Matt Reeves', I believe it's got an official name, the Batman Epic Crime Universe or something. I can't remember what it's called. It's called something. They gave it a name. A name that they definitely can't live up to. It has the word epic in it, which, I mean, there's only been 2 things released within this universe, and both of them have been absolutely fantastic. So we're here to talk about the Penguin. We'll get into spoiler talk down the line, but first of all, let's just talk about the show and the broader strokes of the show as a whole. So, up first, let's just get the obvious one out of the way. Colin Farrell as Oz, as the Penguin, as Oswald Cobb, is absolutely incredible. He takes what was already an incredible performance from the Batman and just adds layers and layers and layers to it. Everything he does is absolutely perfect. I think this is a performance that defines the career of another actor, and it's kind of just something we've come to expect from Colin Farrell, which is insane. But some of his best work, I mean, the last thing I was like super in, and he's probably done something in between. Let me just confirm that he's done something in between. The last thing Colin Farrell did that I was completely aware of was The Banshees of Inisherin. And if you know me, you know how much I love that movie. You know how much I love his performance in it. You know how much I love Martin McDonagh. You know how I think he was robbed for the Oscar, because he absolutely should have won the Oscar for that movie. He should have been. I mean, everyone in the movie should have won the Oscar. The only debate on who should have won an Oscar that year, it shouldn't have been out of the varying performances in the Bad Bagel movie that I don't like. It should have been Barry Keoghan or Brendan Gleeson who wins the supporting actor Oscar. It's just an incredible film. But to go from that, he's done 2 things in between. He's done a short film called The Spaceman, and he done an Apple TV show called Sugar, where he plays like a detective or something. So I guess maybe the detective into Oz was maybe not that much of a disconnect, but for me, the last thing I have conscious memory of him being was Porrick Suleiman in The Banshees of Inisherin, and the thing he did before that was The Batman. And you just look at the range of Colin Farrell. He's one of the best actors alive, and he's proven it here. Like I say, Oz is a performance that defines the career of another actor, and for Colin Farrell, I'm just like, it's just what he does. Insane. Outside of Colin Farrell's work as Oz, there is of course an incredible cast of other characters and supporting characters throughout the series, and I mean, it's really hard to say who impressed me more between Renzi Feliz as Victor and Kristen Milioti as Sophia. I'm probably gonna have to say, for me, I was a little tiny bit more impressed with Renzi Feliz, just to have a lot less screen time than Sophia, not a lot less, but less screen time than Sophia, and be an actor that is a relative unknown, a young actor. Obviously, Kristen Milioti's been in a lot of things, Palm Springs, How I Met Your Mother, are the first 2 things that are coming to mind, but when I saw she was announced, I knew she was going to be good in this. Renzi Feliz was someone I wasn't overly familiar with. I know he'd been in a couple of things, but nothing that I'd seen him in. And right away just grabbed me as my favourite character in the show. And he was throughout. He was absolutely fantastic at every single turn. Truly incredible, and I'm very excited to see what doors this opens up for him, what doors being in this show have now opened, or has now opened, because he was the emotional core of this show. He's the one thing that kind of keeps Oz. Well, his mum, who was obviously an incredible part of the show, and we'll get to her in a minute, but the character of Victor is the sort of, I guess, the moral compass of, not the moral compass of Oz, because he doesn't have one, but the thing that kind of keeps him grounded and focused without without losing track, without kind of blinding him to his weaknesses. I think Victor was an incredible addition to the show, an incredible character for the show, and he couldn't have been portrayed any better by Renzi Feliz. He did an absolutely fantastic job. As mentioned, the performance by Kristen Milioti as Sophia Falcone and Sofia Gigante was fantastic all the way through. Every single time she's on screen, you absolutely cannot take your eyes off her. She is just a magnet for your attention. She was incredible throughout the entire show. The way that she played this sort of broken, tortured character, someone that her family had turned their back on her, and this life of crime had overtaken her because no one saw her as a real threat, as the woman of the family, as the daughter. to then rising through the ranks and leading the crime family and everything throughout the show. She was absolutely fantastic. And then finally, the last unbelievable performance of the show was Deirdre O'Connell as Oz's mother, as Frances. Oh my God, every scene that she is in and the way she can change from Frances being cognizant of what's going on to sort of losing track or getting confused and not being there, she was just incredible. Just breaks your heart at every turn. Every single step with that character was incredible. I absolutely loved it. Probably the one thing many people are going to take away from this is just how many incredible performances there were from every single cast member, but in particular the main four. Another big thing that this show did well is it improved incredibly on the mythos of the movie The Batman. I think the way that it took the events of that movie and showed us them from the perspective of the ground level of the organised crime rebuilding and the power vacuum left by the death of Carmine Falcone, Oz trying to fill that void, all the other gangs now going for it because Carmine is now dead, the Maroni's making moves from prison. The way that the events of the Batman were shown and how they have impacted the world and the way it built on all the questions that we have following the Batman was perfect. There was of course the episode that begins with Victor's perspective of the seawalls being bombed and losing his family in the flood, and we see his neighbourhood of Crown Point. It still doesn't have power after the floods, whilst all the rich neighbourhoods do. We see that people are living in squalor and in abandoned buildings, and buildings are being condemned, with the city still not putting the necessary funds into these areas to help get these people out of the situation that happened because of the Riddler. And I think at every step, it treats the movie with such great respect without ever trying to be... I don't want to say necessary viewing, because I truly believe this is necessary viewing, and obviously the Batman Part 2 is still more than 2 years away. So we have no clue what's going to happen in that movie. They've probably just finished the script, I would imagine, hence why they've announced the release date. But I imagine with any sort of big connected universe stuff, it helps if you've watched every single thing, but when there's a lot of things happening, and especially if something's on TV and maybe you don't have HBO or you can't afford to watch HBO and you don't really know about how to find other more creative ways to get this show in your hands, you know, I imagine there will be people going into the Batman who haven't seen this. So it does all that it can to treat that movie with so much respect and paint a bigger picture for the second movie without ever stepping outside of the realms of what it was. Because, to give the first spoiler of the video, Batman doesn't show up. The last shot of the show is the Gotham City skyline with the bat signal in the air, in the sky, but we don't ever see Robert Pattinson's Batman. Oz is making all these moves in the dark, and he's only hindered by himself and other criminals. It's never once stopped or hindered or cut off by the Batman. So it's a nice self-contained adventure that gives a lot of texture to this world that will probably be referenced, or it will almost definitely be referenced in the movie. But I imagine, you know, say they talk about Bliss, and Batman saying, oh, Bliss has come through, and then there'll be like, I don't know, a cop who just goes, yeah, you were off on vacation for the last month. Bliss is a new drug that the Penguin brought in, or something. You know, like there'll be something to have a standard for people who haven't watched the show, for people who don't want to dedicate the 8 hours of their life to watching the show, which everyone absolutely should. It was absolutely incredible. I love the way that every character acted completely three-dimensionally. Every character felt complete and complex, and every character was motivated in ways that make sense for this universe. Victor is trying to steal the hubcaps off of Oz's car to make some money because the city's been flooded and everything's fucked, and he just needs money because he wants to go. He wants to get out with his girlfriend. They talk about leaving. I think it's episode 3. They have a plan to leave Gotham because the places where they are from is flooded and they cannot live there anymore. No one in this show feels like they are doing things purely because the writers want them to happen. And I obviously understand everyone in every show or movie or stage production or any story does things because the writer of the story wants those things to happen. But nothing feels contrived in the way that, like I said in the movie Venom, where everything is just happening because the writer was like, hey, wouldn't it be cool if, I don't know, Venom said he liked a pair of Jordans or something. You know? Everyone feels human, and everyone feels real, and everyone feels like their motivations are necessary for what they are doing and trying to achieve. And I understand I have just given a lot of praise to this show for the fact that the writers were good at writing the characters that they created, but if you've seen the show, you know. Now, before we go into the portion of the video where I discuss the spoilers and possible maybe plot threads that are going to ideally carry over into the Batman 2, I would like to talk about just a couple of things that I don't love about the show. No, I don't love, just things that I don't like. And to be perfectly clear, I think this show is perfect. I think this show is a 10 out of 10, which flies in the face of the idea that I have a couple of things that I don't necessarily like. But in terms of what I don't like, it's nothing about what the show has done. The show was very clearly given incredibly clear instructions from the higher-ups and from Matt Reeves. This is where we start, this is where we end. You start at the end of the movie, you have this movie to watch to work out where you start. Here's a rough idea of where everything should be at the end of this show. You now have this area to work in, you fell in the middle. And I can appreciate that. But there were just a couple of things that, to me, felt a little bit odd. First of all is the name change. He's no longer Oswald Cobblepot, he's Oswald Cobb, I guess, because Cobblepot sounds too comic booky, but who cares? I guess maybe it sounds too old money, I guess. I can see that, but it was removed to give him a more sort of realistic sounding name and not a big comic booky, cartoony one. I didn't necessarily love that. I just think no one's really gonna care if he has his comic name, and it feels odd if you don't do it, because it kind of feels like you go, the comics are dumb and beneath us, so we need to create a real name for a real character when it's no one would have cared if he had his normal comic name. I wouldn't even be talking about this. I wouldn't be talking about it here going, and it's weird that he has the name Cobblepot because he's actually like, he's not up, like, no one would care. So I found that a bit odd. Matt Reeves also talked about how the reality of the Batman was sort of grounded but heightened in a sense. Obviously, he jumped off the roof of the GCPD with a squirrel suit, hit a bridge, and was like back out fighting the next couple of days. That's not going to happen in the real world. That's not going to happen in the Nolanverse. That's obviously if a person jumps off a fucking building with their little squirrel suit. If they are able to fly, if they hit a bridge at that speed, they're fucked. I don't care how much money you've got, you are fucked. And there was all this sort of talk of Matt Reeves said, he's like, not that I won't bring in Superman, but the idea for me is, how do you bring Superman into this sort of heightened version of reality? How would we treat it if, you know, this god from the sky came down kind of thing? And he talked about wanting to use Clayface, and he talked about wanting to use Mr. Freeze. And it's since come out in the kind of years since he said that maybe the Clayface he wants is like the original Silver Age Clayface, who just kind of wears masks like Marvel's Chameleon. But he said as well with like Freeze, how do I find a way that fits into the sort of heightened but still sort of realistic-ish version of this? And I get that, but having this street level, you know, mafia show and giving no sort of hints or allusions to the weirder and wackier and wider world of the Batman universe, fine, that might not have worked here, but not even like a little throwaway line or a little thing in a paper that someone might have saw that kind of gives the idea that things like that could be happening. They don't need to be referenced by characters in the plot, but if you see it somewhere, you can go, oh shit, there's that maybe Croc? Is that like Killer Croc maybe? Or are we doing Ivy? Or are we doing something like that? Instead of just by giving us just a straight-laced, real, gritty Sopranos, but maybe Batman will show up, to me it feels less and less likely that Matt Reeves will take these big comic booky swings. And maybe James Gunn's DCU has something to do with that. Maybe the fact that James Gunn is probably going to be the one giving us the big dumb comics Batman where he's fighting, you know, like a Freeze or an Ivy. And maybe Matt Reeves will do their real life detective noir Batman. Losing the possibility of seeing that in other properties within this universe is a little bit upsetting to me, because I thought that would have been a really interesting way to look at these characters. Especially when Matt Reeves talked so passionately about how would I make Mr. Freeze work. I don't know, but I maybe want to find that out. And I'm not saying that it can't do it, but to me it kind of feels like he's gone, well, if James Gunn is going to do the weird stuff, I'll just do like the murderers and stuff, I guess. Which takes a tiny little bit of the excitement out of it for me. The world that Reeves built was absolutely impeccable, and all the ideas that he had, that he discussed, were really, really exciting to me. But if this is the way it looks, and we're possibly losing the chance to see these characters interact with Robert Pattinson's Batman, the majority of the most interesting rogues in Batman's Rogues Gallery won't fit into this sort of realistic scope. So I don't love it. But apart from those issues that I have with the implications for the wider world of the Batman, I have absolutely nothing bad to say about this show. For what this show set out to do, and where this show was supposed to begin, and where the show was supposed to end, I have absolutely no qualms with this show. And now I've looked at the time there. I've been recording for 19 minutes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to end this video here. And tomorrow I'll be standing exactly here, wearing this hoodie, talking spoilers. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. Let me know what you thought of the Penguin down below. Let me know what you are hoping for, things that you are excited for going forward with the Batman Epic Crime Saga, or whatever it's called. It's in the video somewhere if I can find what they officially called it, or if someone maybe was just telling porcupines on Twitter. We don't know. We'll find out in the edit, baby. Thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. My name is Jake, and thank you for letting me talk about capes.